All right, you guys, welcome finally to the childhood immune dysfunction class. I know I was sick this week, so I had to delay it a couple of days. So I really apologize in advance for that, but thank you for still coming along. We have tons of information to cover. So I'm going to try and go through it. We will answer your questions as you guys type them through as much as possible, but please keep them coming. And just know that any trending questions, like if people have the same question over and over, we'll probably do another video. So just kind of look out for that. Okay. So there is a reason why you guys came out here today, and that is to figure out what the heck is going on with our kids and their immune system health, right? So things we are going to cover today are some facts and figures about this kind of illness season, about kids getting sick. We're going to go over some statistics as well as what constitutes the immune system. Now, that is going to be kind of the basis of everything. If you can understand what constitutes the immune system, everything else that I tell you just kind of falls upon that. Okay, so I hope to cover that really thoroughly with you guys in a manner that's really understandable. We're going to go over understanding gut dysfunction and fixing gut dysfunction with nutrition, and then supplementation, herbs, and oils. Just some tools to have in your toolbox for those rainy days when your kids get sick, and just kind of every day, just helping your child build their immune system, because you want them to have a strong immune system to fight off all of these viruses, bacterias, and so on and so forth. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but before we kind of go in there, most of you probably know me from my classes that I do. I do a lot of live classes from the seminar that we've just done. Some of you people are new, so I just want to introduce myself. My name is Jonique Roney. This is my family, my husband Tristan. Most of you guys kind of know our story, but I'm trying to figure out whose story to tell first. So 4 years ago, when I had my son Tennyson, I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. And if you are familiar with what Graves' disease is or isn't, or if you aren't familiar with it, Graves' disease is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid. Now, it's hyperthyroidism, so it speeds up all the cellular processes in your body, so much so that you're shaky, that your heart is beating really fast, and you can actually die from Graves' disease if it's untreated. You die of a heart attack because your heart, like your resting heart rate, is about 120 to like 160 beats per minute, and that's what it should be when you're sprinting. And so I would wake up with my heart just pounding, and I felt like I was going to faint. That's called a thyroid storm. And so I went to a doctor, and we did blood work, and she said, yeah, you are full-blown Graves' disease, and so I'm going to send you to an endocrinologist, and you're going to go on all these drugs, and we'll potentially cut out your thyroid. And I was like, whoa, time out. Like, let me research this and fix this naturally. And she said, okay, I'm going to monitor you really closely. But I'm only giving you a few months. And so I researched Graves' disease, and through nutrition, through diet, through stress management, I completely, and I can't say cured myself, but I went into spontaneous remission. Doctors don't believe it. Some still don't to this day. And actually, when I had my daughter Satori, I got Graves' disease a second time. And they did the blood work, and they called me from the hospital, and they're like, if you feel anything weird, go to the emergency room immediately because you have Graves' disease. Anyways, I did the exact same steps I did a few years prior. They did my blood work a month later, and they're like, oh, no, you don't have Graves' disease. There must have been some mistakes in your lab work. And I'm like, no, I know what Graves' disease feels like. And they're like, no, you're not showing Graves' disease right now. So our blood work was clearly wrong. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So I am a perfect case of how you can fix an autoimmune disease through nutrition, okay? Now, my story with my husband was, and most of you know this, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and we did the mainstream route, which was chemo, radiation, while hitting it with nutrition. When that, and then like 5 surgeries later, they were still like, he's still stage 4. The prognosis is really bad. We want to do more chemo. And we said, no, we're going to pursue natural therapies. So we started our own clinic. We do nutrition counseling. We do hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We do ozone therapy. And we see a lot of really, really sick people. But from all of these stories, we have seen so many miracles happening through people changing their diet, through people doing these therapies, through people doing stress management, a lot of self-care. It's been really rewarding to get into this and to see how people's lives are changing. Not changing even just for the better, although that is happening, but people are extending their lives. And that to me is unbelievable. So that's our story. That's how we got into this. This is how I started lecturing, just because of my knowledge and my husband's experience and my experience and so on and so forth. So that's who we are. Moving on. Okay, so the flu. Let's learn about the flu a little bit. Last year was the worst flu the U.S. had ever experienced in 45 years, except for 2009, which was the swine flu epidemic. But that's a different story for another time. But they saw more than double the hospitalizations last year. And then news outlets are saying, and the CDC is saying, that this year is projected to actually be worse. Now, with all of this flu stuff happening, because flus, they mutate year after year after year. And so, yes, we can get a vaccine if you want, but there are literally hundreds of different types of flus. And with them mutating, it is so hard to get the correct flu vaccine for all of the mutations out there, okay? So we kind of have a disconnect. Flu viruses and bacteria are getting stronger. Our immune systems are getting weaker, and we can no longer just rely on vaccines to save us. And that's kind of the culture that we've created, right? It doesn't matter what our immune system does because the vaccine is going to save us. And that's just not true. We have to do our part. We have to do our work to build our immune system, okay? Because like I said before, there are just way too many viruses, way too many bacteria out there. And then if you get a bacterial infection, antibiotics are going to save you, right? And we're going to go through this and see just how false that can be. It's short-term benefits with long-term consequences. And so we want to be really conservative with how we use antibiotics in our children's lives, okay? So with the flu is actually mainly a respiratory illness. So it's nose, throat, lungs. The stomach flu, on the other hand, is not a flu at all. So that is more of a bacterial infection. So if you are throwing up, if you have sore stomach, if you have the runs, and then you go to a doctor and they prescribe you an antibiotic, then that is probably well constituted. Although again, I don't want to say don't listen to your doctors, but a lot of times your body can't handle what it's fighting off. However, if you do have the flu, antibiotics will not deal with your flu. What it might help you with are secondary infections that you might have. But again, a lot of the time your immune system is designed to deal with that. So you go to the doctor, you have the flu, he prescribes you antibiotics. Antibiotics really aren't going to do much for you. And I'm going to talk about in a little bit why antibiotics are so problematic in just a second. So and as I said before, there are hundreds of different flus, and they're constantly mutating. So remember this is important, okay? Now, kind of going back on my antibiotic thing. So and I was kind of jumping the gun. So antibiotics cannot treat colds and flus. It just cannot. If you had the flu and because your immune system was down and then you got a bacterial infection, yes, it will absolutely help with that bacterial infection. If you got a sinus infection because your immune system was down, it can help with the sinus infection. But it is not going to help you get over that flu faster. There are other ways that you can help get over that flu, but it's just one of those things that's what your body was trained to do, basically. Antibiotics are overprescribed, and here is why. You go to a doctor and their job is to be helpful, okay? So you go and you're sick, or you take your child and they're sick. One, absolutely heed the word of your doctors. But two, ask a lot of questions, okay? They are not always right, and here's the reason why. They're not an expert on your child, okay? So as a parent, as a mom, as a dad, as a grandparent, use your intuition to kind of feel out what's going on. And just realize that, yes, doctors are experts in their fields, but they're not experts in your child's health, okay? So if you take your sick child to a doctor and the doctor kind of is just like, we'll prescribe you some antibiotics, ask them, do you think this is a bacterial infection or do you think this is viral? I'll tell you a quick story. When I took my daughter in, she had a double ear infection and it was bad. She was miserable. And this was last year's flu season, the one that was really bad. And she said, oh, this is probably because of a viral infection. So I'm going to give her a prescription for antibiotics and her symptoms should clear up in about 48 hours. I'm like, wait, she has a viral infection that's caused this ear pain, but you're giving her antibiotics and it's going to take 2 days for it to clear up. And so I did some research and I was like, and so I got the prescription and I bought the antibiotics, but then I aggressively treated her double ear infection with mullein garlic. I did some ozone therapy because, again, I have my clinic, so I know that I kind of have a cheat there. But when her fever and her pain was just too intense, I would actually give her some ibuprofen to just kind of help her manage and help her sleep. And by some miracle, and I don't want to say miracle, it was biology, but in 2 days' time, her ear infection cleared up and she did fine. Now, if I'd put her on antibiotics, she still would have cleared up in 2 days, and I would have been like, oh, it's the antibiotics, but it really was her own immune system. So I'm going to talk to you about why having their fever run for as long as possible is important. But again, you want to make sure your child is comfortable as well. So that's important as well. But kind of going back to the slide here, antibiotics also kills beneficial bacteria that regulates and supports the immune system. So there was a reason why I didn't want to give her those antibiotics, especially because this was a viral infection. Do I explain that now or later? I'll explain that later, okay? So research shows us that antibiotics during and after pregnancy affects our baby's gut health. And you're kind of wondering, okay, Janique, why do you keep going back to gut health? What does this have to do with my child's immune system? And so I'm going to kind of explain that. I wonder, can I go back? I can go back in slides. Okay. So I am going to show you this slide right here. Okay. So your immunity, can you see my mouse here? Perfect. So your immune system is comprised of your gut biome, and it's 70% of your gut biome. So when most people think of the immune system, they think of the white blood cells, right? And that is just not true. Your white blood cells, although extremely important, are only 30% of your immune system. So your gut biome is 70, white blood cells are 30. Now look at this, you guys. Your gut biome right here controls your white blood cells through a process called chemotaxis, okay? Now, if you have the right gut flora, then your gut flora creates a chemical that controls your white blood cells and tells them what to do. Now, as human beings, we have a brain that tells us what to do. As cells, they rely on chemicals. They rely on ions, they rely on vitamins and minerals. They rely on their environment to tell them what to do and how to act. So when you have the right amount of gut bacteria here, it's going to create chemicals that tell your white blood cells just how effective they need to be, okay? Now, we need good gut bacteria. How do we get good gut bacteria in our children? Through the foods they eat and their environment. Now, if we are constantly giving them antibiotics, which literally kills this gut biome, how do we keep their immune system up? And that's why I was kind of fumbling over that concept earlier of, listen to your doctors. They are most likely going to prescribe antibiotics, but use your intuition. Obviously listen to your doctor, but it is so important that we protect this gut biome, because the stronger it is, the more variety it has, the more of the good guys that proliferate in the gut, the stronger the immune system is going to be. The better your white blood cells here are going to act and react and fight off viruses and bacteria and pathogens, okay? So the more drugs we use, the antibiotics, the ibuprofens, the NSAIDs, and all that, the stress, things that we're exposed to, the less our gut biome is going to work for us, okay? Now, I'm going to kind of go back here. So, I wonder, you can't see that, but it says your body/immune system is kind of like a business, okay? So, why does our immune system sometimes not work well? Okay, now I've been kind of talking about the gut biome, which is literally more than half of your immune system. Now pretend your immune system and your body is a business. And it's a pretty big business. It's like a corporation. It has like 1,000 employees, okay? And it works really well with 1,000 employees. And they have their designated jobs, and tasks get out on time. Everyone's meeting their goals, and everything's functioning like a well-oiled machine. Okay, now let's say this company lays off half of its employees, but still expects that company to function just as well. What do you think is going to happen? Deadlines are not going to be met. Projects are going to fall through. You're going to have a lot of angry clients. You're going to have some really stressed out employees. You're going to have some really angry CEOs. You're not going to make as much money. You're going to lose a lot of your clientele. Things will not work well, okay? Do you kind of see where I'm getting with this? Okay, so with the analogy of your body being like a business, the more employees you have, the better your business works. The more employees you fire, or in our case with gut biome, the more gut biome you kill off, the less your immune system is going to work. Things will go through the cracks. Your white blood cells don't get the messages they're supposed to be getting. And then we have all this immune dysfunction, okay? Now, back to our employees. If they're not healthy employees, if we're not feeding them the right foods, and then they're taking a lot of sick days, then your immune system, your business, it's going to start breaking down. It's going to start having loopholes. We're going to get a lot of angry clients. We're going to lose a lot of business. The CEO is going to be mad, and everything just kind of goes down, down, down. Okay. So now going back to this slide, your gut biome, your workers, they are so important. We need to treat them like gold. We need to protect them. We need to feed them good foods. We need to expose them to a healthy environment. And we're going to kind of cover that in a little bit here too. Okay, now you're kind of wondering, how do you know? Okay, now I know that my child has this immune system. How do I know if their immune system is functioning properly? How do I know if my child has healthy gut biome, healthy good bacteria versus bad bacteria? There are symptoms that you can look out for. Okay, so signs of immune dysfunction in your child. They get sick more than average. So 4 to 6 times a year. How many times did your kids get sick last year within that flu season? That was a brutal season, you guys. But if your child, and so we'll kind of like let last year slide, but if your child is getting sick more than 6 times a year, their immune system isn't working really well, okay? I also want to add to that, if they are getting sick and they're staying sick for really long periods of time, like 1 to 2 weeks versus 3 to 5 days, there might be some stuff going on there. Your child gets chronic ear infections. Now, remember when I spoke about bacteria? Like, yes, a lot of times we go to antibiotics, but studies have shown the more antibiotics you give your child or your baby, the more ear infections they're going to get. Why is that? Well, let's go back to this. Okay, so what I forgot to explain to you is you always have good bacteria and bad bacteria in your gut, okay? What constitutes a healthy immune system is which one is proliferating more. You want the good guys to proliferate more, and they control the bad guys. They keep them down, okay? Now, when you aren't feeding these good guys, they're gonna die off a little bit more, and these bad guys are gonna grow. And then you get infections, you get sick, you get autoimmune issues, and so on and so forth, okay? You are never going to get rid of the bad guys. They're always going to be there, okay? But what matters is if they are being controlled by the good guys, they're being pushed down, and they're just kind of taking a back space, and the good guys are keeping them under wraps, okay? Kind of like putting the bad guys in jail. Now, when the cops are gone, the jailmates, they all break out and they wreak havoc and whatnot, right? So we're never going to get rid of the prisoners or bad people, but we can put them in jail, right? So with these chronic ear infections, when you're killing off these bad guys, right, the good guys here, those bad guys are going to break out over and over and over again. And then what happens? You throw more antibiotics and the good guys die more and more and more. And yes, the bad guys die too, but they proliferate faster because of those antibiotics, okay? So we need to be really careful. And here's the thing is you're like, well, there are some instances where they have to take antibiotics, and there are things you can do to help with that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So don't despair. There are things you can do because, I mean, even my son, he's been on antibiotics before. Only once in his entire life. My daughter hasn't yet, but my son was 4 when he took his first round of antibiotics. So I consider that pretty lucky. Okay, so chronic infections. Chronic sniffles. Does your child have like the perma run here? Like is his shirt like constantly green from snot all the time? Are they constantly sniffling? Are they constantly wiping their nose? Could be signs that something's going on and it's not clearing up, and the immune system is just not switching on here and clearing things up. Here's a big one, eczema, you guys. Does your child ever have bouts of eczema? Another one I want to add in there, if you have babies, do they get a lot of diaper rashes all the time? Now, my daughter Satori has had 2 diaper rashes in her entire time. I will be honest, I am terrible with changing her diaper. I'm so bad, but it's because she never gets rashes. And so I've been trained poorly to not change her as much, and I really should. But she's had 2 diaper rashes her entire lifetime. And when I see that there's a diaper rash, 1, I know I need to change her more. 2, I know she's been eating too much sugar. So eczema, diaper rashes, these things just don't heal up very quickly. That is signs of immune dysfunction. Allergies. Does your child have food allergies? Do they have seasonal allergies? Okay, that is a huge telltale sign. Okay, if they have allergies. Stress, or do they get anxious easily? Now, a lot of you have probably heard that your gut is actually now called the second brain, because a lot of neurons, and not neurons, but like, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Neurotransmitters are actually produced in your gut. In fact, 200 times, serotonin is produced 200 times more in your gut than in your brain. So if you're having brain issues, you might want to look at your gut, okay? Autoimmune diseases. Do they have arthritis, diabetes? Again, eczema. That's kind of like an autoimmune issue. Do they have any autoimmune things showing up? That is a sign of immune dysfunction. Is your child chronically constipated or have diarrhea? Now, most of the time, most people's kids that I hear of are chronically constipated. And that is a problem. They should not be constipated. They should be going about at least once a day, if not twice. My son poops twice a day, sometimes 3 times, okay? They need to be pooping all the time, because if they get impacted in there, they're just reabsorbing all that bad stuff, and it needs to come out, okay? Now, this is an interesting one. The white foam on a tongue after eating. If your child eats some food and you say, okay, show me your tongue, and they stick up their tongue and it's not pink, it has a white foam on there, they have yeast problems, okay? Another sign of gut dysfunction. Does your child have bad breath? That's a pretty easy one to know. And then headaches. Does your child suffer from headaches? Headaches is a sign of chronic inflammation. So if we have inflammation, we have immune dysfunction. If we have immune dysfunction, we have gut dysfunction. Do you see where I'm kind of going with this, guys? All right. So what do we do about this? Let's see. All right. So if 70% of our immune systems are gut biome, how do you know if it's working hard for your kids? Well, that's how you know, if they are showing signs of that. Okay. Now, let's briefly, let me go back to this slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about environment right now, okay? And then we're going to go to foods, and foods is going to be really important. But let's talk about what we can do to help preserve your kids' immune system through their environment, okay? All right, so you guys ready? All right, when your child is sick, they will run a fever. Now, oftentimes when our kids run a fever of like 101, it's like, oh, let's pop out the ibuprofen, right? I did a delayed vaccine schedule on my son. He was almost 4, and we won't get into vaccines because it's really controversial and whatnot. But I remember when he got the vaccine and his doctor just gave him some ibuprofen. Oh, if your son's a little uncomfortable, give him some ibuprofen. And I'm like, why would I want to do that? Like, and here's the thing. When your child is running a fever, it does 2 things, and we're going to go into one of the things in a little bit more detail later. But a fever stimulates your white blood cells, so it makes them hyperactive so that they can fight off pathogens, so they can fight off viruses, bacteria, anything that's invading your system. But what a fever also does is it takes calcium from the tissues and gives it to your white blood cells. So it hyperactivates them even more. Your white blood cells need calcium in order to turn on. They also need oxygen and tons of oxygen to oxidize the pathogens, okay? So if your child has a viral infection and now you're giving him, and he gets slightly uncomfortable, like a 101, 102, and then you give him ibuprofen, you're dampening that immune response. So the white blood cells aren't fighting quite as hard and quite as fast, and you are, in fact, delaying their recovery time. And now it's so, and I know it is so hard. This is such a hard topic to talk about too. It's so controversial, and I know it's so hard to watch your child be uncomfortable. But 1, check their temperature a lot. If they're running a high fever, if it goes into 101, 102, 103, they're okay. As soon as it gets above 103, goes to 104, yes, now is the time to start the ibuprofen. There are some people that, you know, and this is personally what I do. Some doctors are like, oh, they're okay at 105, 106. I don't like to play around with that because sometimes it takes a while for the ibuprofen to kick in. So normally when I see 103, I'm checking every 20 minutes. As soon as I see 104, I hit the ibuprofen. But most of the time, your kids are going to stick in the 101, 102, 103 range, okay? That's perfectly safe. That's good for them. We want that fever to draw out the calcium from the tissues, feed it to the white blood cells, and hyperactivate those white blood cells like crazy. Another thing this does is a fever in children is it trains their immune system to work harder, work better, work faster. And it's kind of like going to the gym. The more weights you kind of like pump, the more iron you pump, the stronger you get. This is why a lot of people actually buy saunas, because they get in a sauna, they raise their temperature every day, and it stimulates their white blood cells. And what that actually does is it causes phagocytosis. So the white blood cells see dying cells, they see mutated cells, they see cells that aren't really doing their function, and they eat them. Okay? Now, what am I talking about? Mutated cells? Cancer stem cells. So right now, in this moment, and everyone actually has cancer cells in them. We all do. It's just your immune system takes care of them until it doesn't. Okay, so what does a temperature do? It finds those broken cells, those cancerous cells, and it kills them. Okay, isn't that fascinating? So all of us have about 150 to 300,000 cancer cells in us daily that our immune system takes care of. This is true for children too. I don't think those numbers are quite as high for children, but still, like with the billions of cells we have in our body, we are going to have mutated cells. And that's what your immune system is trained to do. It's trained to mark them and kill them or eat them, depending on which T cell it is or immune cell it is. Different lecture for a different time. But that is what that's why a temperature is so important. And that's why people do saunas. You raise the temperature, your immune system goes hyperactive, it kills everything, and it's beautiful, and it leaves you with a nice, strong, healthy body and a really well-trained immune system. You give your kids some anti-inflammatories, you give them NSAIDs, you give them ibuprofen, your immune system isn't working as hard, and it's not doing its job for you, and it's not cleaning you out as well, okay? So try to be really conservative if you can. And again, be smart, research this more. I really do encourage people to research this more. But that fever is serving your child. Now, I do want to talk about when a good time, and we spoke about temperatures, but if your child is extremely uncomfortable and they cannot sleep, and you've let them run that fever all day and it's been hanging around at 102, 103, but they're tossing and they're turning and they're whining, and even though you're cuddling them all day and it's like 11 o'clock at night, give them that ibuprofen, okay? And here's why. 70% of our healing and repairing actually does happen when we're sleeping. So if your child just isn't sleeping, give them a good night's rest, okay? They've earned it. They've earned it enduring that high fever all day long, okay? So it's again, use your mother's intuition. And now with this new knowledge, just it's that game that you have to play, right? Of, okay, what do I do now? What do I do next? Okay? Fevers are good. Sleeping is also good. So what are we prioritizing? Okay? So I'm just going to repeat that again. 70 to 80% of our healing and repairing happens while we're sleeping. So make sure your child is getting some good rest while they're sick at the same time. I save my ibuprofen for at night. I normally give it to my children, like I said, around 11, sometimes 12. That way from 12 until about 6, 7 o'clock, they're sleeping really, really well. Okay? So aspirins. Okay, now, have you ever heard a doctor say, don't take aspirin for a long period of time because it causes stomach ulcers? Okay, if we are disrupting the pH of your stomach so intensely that you're creating ulcers, can you imagine what that's doing to your gut bacteria? Okay, now, your gut bacteria, your workers in your company, in your business, they are really, really fussy about the temperature of the room. And now we're going to pretend the temperature of the room is the pH of your stomach, okay? And the pH of the colon, and the pH of the small intestine. And so if you are taking aspirin that is changing the pH of your stomach, that is going to offset the bacteria that, one, is proliferating in your small intestine, in your colon, and it's going to, one, it's going to make them die off. And two, it's going to make the bad guys come out, okay? So we want to be really careful with aspirins, you guys. Use alternative things that are very similar to aspirin, like curcumin, turmeric. They have these chewables now that are really good if your child is trying to do some pain management stuff, and for adults too. Turmeric is really, really good. Curcumin is just the concentrate. So try to go to curcumin if you can, okay? We've kind of spoken about antibiotics, and we know what antibiotics do. They literally carpet bomb everything systemically. You take an antibiotic, everything's dying. Good guys, bad guys, it's just a bloodbath for bacteria. So we want to be really, really conservative with our antibiotic use if possible. Again, if your child is sick, give it a few days. Don't just jump to the doctor, okay? But again, use that intuition. Do some research, okay? If they are just miserable and you've tried all these alternative approaches and nothing's working, then go to your doctor, okay? Again, if their fevers are really high, go to your doctor. Stress is a big one. So if your kids are really stressed, and I'm sure you guys that have older kids, when they're taking tests, or even kids in college and stuff, I mean, stress just weakens the immune system. It actually takes energy away from the immune system, from your digestion, from your bacteria, to kind of go into a fight or flight response. So we want to make sure that your energy is going into digesting, it's going into your immune system function. So stress management will be key for your children, okay? Now, environment, talking about vaginal births versus C-sections, research has shown that children that have had vaginal births, that's their first exposure to bacteria, and the good bacteria, okay? So if you had a C-section, and again, this is to not shame anyone. C-sections are beautiful births. Vaginal births are beautiful births. But if your child was a C-section baby, you want to make sure you're pumping probiotics like crazy, okay? We want to get that gut flora proliferating and growing like crazy, so it can help digest your food, so it can help boost the immune system, so it can help tell those white blood cells what to do, okay? So just be very hypervigilant if you have C-section babies. Okay, overly sterile environments. Let's talk about this. Again, make sure your kids are washing their hands, please, okay? But if you are that parent that is like sterilizing everything, like your child's toys over and over and over, obviously everything within reason. Now, research has shown that kids that grow up with pets actually have stronger immune systems. Why is that? Because they're exposed to more bacteria and the more variety of bacteria. And if you are exposed to bad bacteria and you have good bacteria, it's going to grow and proliferate and get stronger to keep that bad bacteria at bay. So it's always this like teeter-tottering play that the good bacteria plays with the bad bacteria. And so it's just really good practice for their gut biome to be exposed to a variety of stuff. That's why I like my kids playing outside in the dirt. That's why we live in the mountains, because I want them to get dirty and I want them to be playing and getting exposed to a healthy microbiome that's in the soil and that comes from the trees and so on and so forth. So get your kids outside, get them playing, and then give them a good bath at the end of the day, okay? All right, now this is going to be a really big part of today's talk, and I know you guys, I'm throwing a lot of information at you. So where do I want to start? Okay, nutrition is going to be key. Kind of going back to that original slide. Let me take you back here. Okay, gut biome, 70% of your immune system, right? How do we make sure these good guys are growing and working for you? How do we do that? Because that is going to be key throughout your child's life, throughout your life currently. We need to feed the good guys good foods, and we don't do that in this culture. In fact, the more advanced a country is, so like how there's a third world countries and blah. So countries like America, countries that have lots of money, also have a lot of processed foods. And so countries like ours actually have worse immune systems because we are not feeding our gut bacteria the natural foods that we're supposed to. We're feeding them pizzas. We're feeding them microwave oven foods. We're feeding them burgers and fries and Chick-fil-A. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying never go to Chick-fil-A, but we need to reevaluate our culture around food, you guys. We need to have a serious heart-to-heart because we need to feed our children good, wholesome food. Now, we also live in a culture where our children are literally gagging on vegetables, and this needs to change. Now, and I bet most of us, if you sit your child in front of you and say, sweetie, you're going to have to eat vegetables more from now on, they will melt down big time. And here's why. Sugar and fat and salt are some of the most addicting substances on this planet. Actually, sugar is the most addicting substance on the planet. Second is salt. Third is cocaine. Okay? So, food is a drug. And the food companies know that. So they load up your kids' foods with sugar, with salt, with colorants, with like added flavors, and that's not good for their gut bacteria. It's actually good for the bad bacteria. Bad bacteria thrives off of sugar, thrives off of processed foods, okay? Thrives off of those things. Okay, so we're going to have to talk about vegetables soon. An uncomfortable topic for parents, an uncomfortable topic for kids, but we're going to have to cover that, okay? Okay, the richer the country, the worse the allergies, right? We kind of covered that. So good bacteria thrives off of soluble and insoluble fiber, which you find from fruits and vegetables. Okay. Now, do you know, sitting here right now, listening to this, how many servings of fruits and vegetables your child needs per day? Now, does anybody know how big a serving is? And and this is kind of a cheat. Let's just say one serving is a compacted half cup. How many servings is your child supposed to have? How much daily sugar intake should your child have? And then, and I'm going to answer these questions for you in a little bit, but I want you to kind of mull that over and be like, well, I don't know. Okay, so for an adult, we're going to cover the sugar intake. For an adult, added sugar, this doesn't include fruit, is less than 24 grams of sugar a day. This is for a grown adult. Now, you drink 1 glass of milk, and that's 16 grams of sugar right there. So you drink 1.5 glasses of milk, and that's your daily intake of sugar right there. Okay? For children, it's closer to 10 grams of sugar. Now, parents of babies, when last did you give them a veggie pouch? When last did you give your baby a veggie pouch and look at the sugar content? Here are some of the healthier veggie pouches. And I don't know if you can read this very well, but that entire veggie pouch has 10 grams of sugar right there. Okay? That's your child's daily intake. And we're talking about like a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old. We're not even talking about babies, okay? 10 grams of sugar, 11 grams of sugar, 10 grams of sugar. These are the healthier ones because this has zucchini and bananas and amaranth, sweet potatoes, corn, apple, okay? That is their daily amount of intake, okay? A glass or a cup, one of those apple juices, those have about 40 grams of sugar. How many of your children are drinking fruit juices? No, fruit juice is not a fruit. It's not a fruit serving. I don't care what the FDA says. That is just extracted sugar from fruit. There's no fiber to help bring that sugar spike down. Nothing, okay? That is literally just pure sugar, okay? So we need to have a heart-to-heart with ourselves and then realize that we are overly feeding our children sugar to the nth degree. It's bad, you guys. It's really bad. So how do we fix gut dysfunction? How do we fix these autoimmune issues? How do we create a healthy immune system that isn't working against your child's health? We have to cut down the sugar. Now, this doesn't mean that your child can't eat desserts and candies. My kids still do that, and I use that as leverage for them eating their vegetables. If you eat your veggies, you can get X, Y, or Z, okay? We have to increase their veggie intake, you guys. And then we need to increase their variety in foods. That's going to be really hard to do. Man, I have so much information I still need to cover, and I don't know like how deep I want to go into these topics. Okay, so how do we fix gut dysfunction? If your child has gut issues, there are herbs and supplements you can try. If they have immune issues, like let's try the herbs and supplements before reaching for antibiotics, okay? Get your kids outside as well so that they can get their daily dose of vitamin D. And then again, the gut biome and the bacteria outside is really good for internal bacteria. And then probiotics. Probiotics are going to be crucial for helping your children, especially if they have a hard time digesting, if they have had a lot of antibiotic use in the past, if they were C-section babies, okay? Now, How many servings of fruits and vegetables, I promise I'm answering that, should your child be getting a day? Okay. 3 to 5 servings of fruits and veggies. Let's aim for just 3, okay? So that is a compacted 1.5 cups of vegetables. Now, answer this honestly to yourselves. Did your child get a 1.5 cups of vegetables yesterday? Did your child get a 1.5 cups of vegetables in the past 7 days? Sadly, and this is to not be judgmental, but this is the history, and I'll be honest, when I consult my clients and I ask them, how many vegetables do you eat a day? They tell me they eat about a cup a day. And I'm like, you guys, they're like, maybe half a cup. And these are adults speaking. So for our children, it is worse because it's hard to get them to eat. They're way more fussy. They cry. They make loud noises. I get it. The whining is very piercing. So it's really easy to just give them that pizza. But we need to change that culture, right? Okay, so start with 3 servings. Like, let's try and make that a goal. Now, your child doesn't have to eat like handfuls of spinach just like that. There are so many things you can do. You can hide the vegetables in smoothies. You can make green pancakes. If you guys follow me on Gutsy Living on Instagram or Provo Health on Instagram or Facebook, you guys see I put a lot of recipes out there on how to, like, you know, my friend was telling me there's even waffles that you can make with sweet potatoes. There are so many ways that you can make vegetables tasty and healthy for your children. And that's a whole different class for another time. But it doesn't have to be a battle. You can make vegetables fun, interesting, tasty. Maybe I should do a class on how to get your kids to eat vegetables. I think that's, if you guys want that class, that webinar, let me know, okay? And then I'll put something together in the next few weeks and we can talk about how to get your kids to eat well. Because I have tried a lot of things in the past and I know it works and I know it doesn't. But I will tell you now, my kids are incredible eaters. They are so good. Do they love candy? Oh my gosh, yes. Yes. But I still let them eat the candy because I don't want to create this this mentality of deficiency, right? Where they now become obsessed with sugar and they start hiding it and they're hoarding it in their closet and they're stealing it from their friends. It's all about balance, you guys. So back to those 3 servings of vegetables, 3 to 5 a day, 3 servings of fruits a day, 1 serving of grains a day, 1 servings of beans, proteins, and then I say half a serving of dairy. Now, you're like, what is this, Shanique? What are you showing me here? So this was from a website based off of the USDA food guidelines. And you guys, I have issues with the USDA food pyramid. No, it doesn't work. Because the first, like, the number one thing that they're telling your kids to eat is bread. Like, okay. Oh man, there's so much information I still need to cover and I have like 12 minutes. Okay, so let's just dive into this. So they're saying for a 2 to 3-year-old, 3 ounces and 1 ounce is 1 slice of bread. So your 2 to 3-year-old should be eating 3 slices of bread a day. Okay, not only is bread severely tainted these days because it is sprayed with so much glyphosate, but it is also created, they used to use iodine with bread making, but they switched the iodine for bromine. And bromine is very similar to iodine, but not, and it's very toxic for your thyroid. So if you're wondering why so many people have thyroid dysfunction, it's because of all the bread we're eating, because of the bromine we're eating, because it's blocking iodine uptake and blah, blah, blah. So I say your child should have about 1 to 2 servings of grains a day. So that's 1 slice of bread, good wholesome bread, homemade bread, organic bread, bread with, like, try and find really good sources of bread. But it doesn't have to be bread. It can be rice. It can be oatmeal. It can be quinoa, although quinoa is a seed. Switch it up a little bit, okay? This says cooked pasta. Guys, pasta is so processed. Again, it's created with wheat, which is super inflammatory. If your child has immune dysfunction, if your child has autoimmune, if your child has eczema, if your child has childhood rheumatoid arthritis, if your child has anything that was on that list of symptoms, like the runny nose, constantly getting sick, they should not be eating bread. They should not be eating pasta. They should not be eating pizza, which is basically bread with cheese. They should be eating wholesome grains, rice, oatmeal, all that kind of stuff, okay? And it shouldn't be the biggest thing they're eating, okay, you guys? So that's my little tirade. So my serving size of grains is 1 servings, 2 if your child is very hungry. But again, like it shouldn't be the, 3 to 5 servings that they're suggesting here. That's just outrageous, okay? And again, like I said, grains are very inflammatory if you have immune dysfunction, okay? Now, vegetables, they say for a 2 to 3-year-old, 1 cup, and 1 cup of raw cooked vegetables is equal to a cup. And so, like I said, we want it to be closer to like 3 cups, okay? So that's where I kind of disagree with that. For fruit, they're saying 1 cup of fruit, and I say closer to 3. And here's why. Because I would much rather you train your children to crave fruit sugars than to crave candy sugars, okay? Fruit sugars and fruit in its whole essence has fiber, it has the skin, it has the sugar. And so when you're eating that fruit sugar with the fiber brings down that sugar spike. When you're just doing fruit juice, oh my gosh, and you guys look at this. 1 cup of fruit juice there. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, do you want your child to like go into like a diabetic shock every day? Guys, don't give them fruit juice, please. If there's anything you're going to cut out today, it is fruit juice and soda for your children. Please let it get the hence. It is not helping your children at all. Okay, so that's where my battle. That's where my servings for fruits is a little bit on the high side, because I would much rather your kids go for a banana, go for an apple, go for grapes over goldfish, which again is just wheat, and it's toxic wheat because it has all that glyphosate, all that bromine. It's super inflammatory for the gut. So yeah, rather have them eat fruit than bread, than other stuff, than candies, okay? What's next? Vegetables, fruits. Okay, this dairy. Now, I could do a whole class on dairy and the culture around dairy, the politics around dairy, but we're not going to get into that. Okay, I'm going to keep my zen. But I am shocked that for a 2 to 3-year-old, they're saying 2 cups of dairy a day. Like, are you kidding me? I say about half a serving of dairy a day. If your child is big, then sure, 1 cup, okay? Give them, but this is my lecture on dairy. Are you ready? You ready for this? Okay. If you can find raw milk, get raw milk, because this is what happens when you get homogenized, pasteurized milk. First, when you get commercial milk, they are pumping their cows with antibiotics. And remember how I hate antibiotics because it disrupts gut biome? Okay, now you're drinking milk that comes from a cow that had tons of antibiotics. The antibiotics are getting into the milk, okay, because you are what you eat, all right? Now, they're pumping them with antibiotics because those cows are living in their own feces because of the poor farming practices and blah, 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 and that's a whole different class for another time. But the cows are really dirty, so they are loaded with antibiotics so that we can actually sell their meat and their milk. So now we're getting this milk, and it's now being heated like crazy because of all of that gross, nasty, the bacteria that is sure to kill you. So they are pumping them with antibiotics. They're heating everything like crazy. They're killing off the good bacteria with the bad bacteria. And not only that, but these protein molecules that you're supposed to absorb really well, with all that heat, they're agglutinating. So now you have these really clumpy, inflammatory protein molecules that no one can absorb, okay? So what happens? You drink this protein, this yucky protein with tons of like heated, everything's dead. Basically, it's dead milk and loaded with antibiotics. And it creates dysfunction in your gut, and it creates inflammation because your gut's like, I don't know what to do with this. This isn't real food. So what happens? So it starts to ferment, but it doesn't ferment properly because it's been so heated. And so it's basically Frankenstein food. And so it goes in there, it wreaks havoc. It's like sandpaper on your gut, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the more of this milk you drink, the more inflammation it creates. And then get this. Your immune system says, wait a second, this stuff you keep putting in me is making me really angry. So what I'm going to do is every time you drink it, I'm going to flag it, and then I'm going to attack it, and I'm going to create an immune response. So now you're going to have an allergy to dairy because we hate this stuff. So you wonder why so many kids have dairy allergies? This is why. They're not drinking real dairy. They're drinking Frankenfood dairy, okay? So if your child, one, doesn't have a dairy allergy, give them real milk, okay? Raw milk. Find a local farmer. Find a co-op. There are ways to find good, wholesome dairy, okay? So do that instead. And keep their serving sizes to half a cup to a cup a day. All right, that was my spiel on dairy. I could go on that for like an hour, guys, but I'm not going to. All right, and then for meat, 1 ounce of meat is, 1 ounce of meat. 2 ounces of meat for kids, or protein, or beans. When last did your kids eat beans? Beans are fantastic, and if you're like, beans make my stomach hurt. Here's the thing with beans. You're not prepping them properly. You're either getting them from a can, and you're not rinsing them, or you're cooking them incorrectly, okay? So what you need to do with your beans is this. Beans, one, are so cheap, you guys. So much cheaper than meat. And they don't have bacteria that can potentially make you sick if they're undercooked. But they do make you gassy and whatever. But you want to buy your beans. You want to soak them for 24 hours, okay? Then you want to rinse off all that water because all the lectins in the beans, that's what makes you gassy, is the lectins. All the lectins are now soaked out. You rinse off that water, and then you cook your beans for hours. I just do mine in the Instant Pot. I don't know how long that is, and I don't know how to cook them on a stove because I got lazy and I just did everything in an Instant Pot. But you're soaking them for 24 hours, you're rinsing that water off, you're putting them in an Instant Pot, you're putting them in fresh water, and you're cooking them for a really long time. And that is how you process and digest your beans. A lot of people that have gut dysfunction when they eat beans, when they prep it like this, it goes away magically. Why is that? Again, because the lectins are gone. So make sure your kids are eating meat, they're eating beans, they're having nut butters, okay? Nuts, seeds, variety is key, okay? There are nut butters you can buy. Oh, I want to talk about peanuts. Peanuts are really inflammatory. Keep your kids away from them for now, okay? They're just horribly tainted with fungus, poor practices, they're overcooked, they're rancid. I could talk about peanuts for 10 minutes, but I won't. But go to almonds, go to cashews, go to like Brazil nuts, walnuts, pecans. There's a nut butter called Nutzo, Nutzo. And it has an almond base, but it has like 7 different nuts in this nut butter. And it is delicious. All my clients that I tell to go to Nutzo love this stuff. My children love it. We put it in our oatmeal every day. It's fantastic. It's got chia in it, flax, so many wonderful things. So beans, meat, nuts, legumes, eat them all, okay? Make sure your kids are eating those. Alrighty? All right. And then obviously good fats. Don't get margarine. That is not real food. That's Frankenfood. Oh, I want to mention something real fast. Going back to our grains. You guys, cereal is not a grain, okay? Like if you buy your kids cereal, and I think I'm going to talk about this later, like it's like Fruity Pebbles and it's, I'll talk about it in a little bit. But honestly, I would rather, cereals are not food. They're just not. I would rather your child ate the box than the actual cereal itself. Think of cereals as not food, but more like a dessert. I bought this healthy healthy cereal. And it's made from like bean flour and whatnot. It has, I don't know, like 7 grams per cup. But I only give like my kid like 3 little pieces of it as his dessert. So I literally use this healthier cereal as like a way to bribe him to eat his vegetables. And it works perfectly. It's not a real food. It's a dessert. It's junk food. Doesn't really serve you, okay? So don't fool yourself and think cereals are an actual real meal, because they're not. Okay, and that brings me into, what about fortified foods? But my cereal is fortified with vitamins and minerals and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's not. What they are actually putting in there are synthetic forms, okay? They're putting in forms that are not readily bioavailable. They're cheap, and your body doesn't absorb them very well, okay? And yeah, they're just synthetic. And most synthetics are derived from petroleum, which is disgusting and very inflammatory. Not a good source. It would almost be like me being like holding up a lump of coal and a piece of broccoli. Where's my camera? And saying, which one do you want to eat? And you'll be and you saying, oh, give me the coal every day. No, it's not the same. Okay. So fortified foods have the synthetics. They have isolated vitamins. They're mostly processed. Okay. Processed foods create so much gut dysfunction, so much inflammation. GMO foods create tons of inflammation too, because it's not bio-recognized by your biome. Our bodies were designed to eat things that grew from the planet. You can't just change millions of years of evolution to something that's completely modified. It just isn't going to happen. Why do you need a fortified food? Like, why are they fortifying these foods? Because they got nothing in them, and because they're not real foods, and they're trying to sell it to you like a real food, but it's not. It's just not real, guys. So don't do the cereals, okay? Yeah. Most of you that come to my lectures, I get really like passionate about these things. If you are new, I should have warned you in the beginning. I'm really sorry. Foods, just, you guys, foods. Okay, so I wanted to talk about, so if your child has an autoimmune dysfunction, if your child has food allergies, it's because these foods, foods that aggravate the gut biome. So I want you to, and again, you're going to be able to go back and listen to this lecture and whatnot. This lecture is going over time. I apologize, you guys. It was supposed to be 60 minutes. It'll probably be more like 80. But this is really important to grasp. Foods that aggravate the gut biome. Sugar, we've kind of brushed on that. Sugar is very inflammatory. It's very inflammatory, and it's extremely addicting. Okay, but that's one of the first things that needs to come out. Okay, dairy, we kind of spoke why on dairy just previously. But if your child has one autoimmune issue, they most likely have multiple that haven't manifested yet, okay? So this is why I tell people that have kids that are really sick, that have eczema, that have allergies, that they just need to cut out all of these foods and let their bodies heal, catch up, desensitize a little bit, and then grow back properly, okay? Wheat and gluten. I kind of spoke about how they process wheat now. I mean, 1, it's genetically modified. 2, they spray the stuff stupid with glyphosate, which is basically a carcinogen, you guys. It's a poison. And we are ingesting this, and our immune systems know that, and our bodies know that, and it's killing off our gut biome. It's creating inflammation, and we are as sick as dogs. Now, this is really interesting. Someone who could have celiac disease, and celiac disease is people that are deathly allergic to gluten. If they get even one morsel of gluten, they flare up like crazy. They're sick, blah, 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 blah. A lot of celiac people, a lot of people that are gluten intolerant, because you can be gluten intolerant and not have full-blown celiac. It's a scale. Now, a lot of these people will actually go to Europe and eat their breads and their cakes and not have any issues whatsoever. Why is this? It's because they grow their wheat differently. In fact, there are some European countries that will not even import our wheat because of how toxic it is. So if they're not touching our wheat, why are we touching our wheat? Okay, so if your child loves bread, you might want to seriously reconsider buying it for one, or getting organic bread, or just making it yourself. Making your own sourdough bread from organic grains that you grind up yourself, okay? That's going to be another class for another time, you guys. Oh, we could talk about this forever. Corn, okay, corn is very inflammatory. It's very starchy. Most of it is genetically modified. And the reason why we have so many corn allergies is because corn is in everything. It's like we're so overexposed to this inflammatory thing that our immune systems are like, meh, I don't like this, get it out, okay? So if your child has immune system issues, gut dysfunction, you want to cut out the corn. We spoke about peanuts as well. And then soy. Some of your kids might have soy allergies because soy is in a lot of products too, and it's also genetically modified. They will probably do better on organic soy, whole bean soy, like edamame or something. But if your child, again, has food allergies, like you just want to cut out all of these things, like cover all of your bases, give the gut a break to heal and repair. And here's why. Okay, so this is kind of a gory picture. I apologize. But do you see how like sensitive that looks and soft? And, you know, this is your gut. Okay, now pretend that these foods here, every time you eat them, are like sandpaper in that gut. Okay, you eat dairy, it goes in that gut, it tears it up like crazy, it gets all inflamed, it gets all sore, and then from that inflammation and that soreness, your white blood cells now come in, and they're trying to heal it up, and then they're tagging that food, and they're like, this food is foe. Every time this food comes in here, we need to overreact and try to get rid of it, okay? And then you get this gut dysbiosis, you get the pains, you get the allergies to the food, and you get this really vicious cycle. The gut isn't healing because you keep eating that food, and then the white blood cells keep tagging that food, and so now you have this hyperactive white blood cell system going on in your body because you're constantly eating this food that your white blood cells have trained themselves to attack. And so now your white blood cells are not only just attacking that food, but they're attacking your tissues systemically. That's how we get eczema. That's how we get arthritis. That's how we get all of these other inflammatory conditions, is because of this dysfunction, because of these foods. Is this kind of making sense? I hope so. Normally, and like I said earlier, normally I do these things live, so like people, I can kind of get like visual cues on if people are picking up what I'm putting down. So I apologize if this isn't making sense. I hope it is making sense. I hope you're still with me throughout this entire thing right now. But okay, moving on. What about the white blood cells? I've kind of spoken about those a little bit, but okay. Oh, do I even want to get into this? Okay, we spoke about the white blood cells being controlled by chemotaxis. I think I am going to brush over white blood cells for now. I kind of spoke about how they tag those molecules, right? Like when you are eating a food that acts as sandpaper on your gut, it inflames your gut, and then your white blood cells go in there and they tag it. And they're like, this is foe, we need to attack this every time they eat it. And then you eat more of that food, and then they keep attacking it. And now they're attacking your gut, they're attacking your other tissues, they're attacking that food, and so on and so forth. So we kind of spoke about that. So I'm not going to go into detail about this too much because I kind of brushed over it. Okay, so that was my spiel for nutrition. I think I'm going to give another class. Tell me if you guys want another class on just how to get your kids to eat right, okay? Because that's a whole other lecture. But supplementation. So when your kids are sick, how do we supplement? We've spoken about how we feed your children to make sure their immune systems stay strong. If they have immune system dysfunction, the foods you need to cut out and the foods you need to put in. But now, sometimes we need some bigger guns to help out, right? Sometimes we just need to play catch up because your child has been sick for years. There's a lot of building blocks that are missing, and we just need a supplement to kind of get things moving along. So this is where supplementation comes into play. I'm always about nutrition first, supplementation second, okay? Okay, so what supplements do I like? For daily/general use, vitamin D. If you live in the mountains and you're going through winter times like this and you're not living in Texas or in Florida, you might want to consider supplementing with vitamin D3 during this time for your kids, okay? Vitamin D, it helps your cells recognize cell dysfunction. It helps your cells recognize mutations, and it also helps to draw calcium from the gut into the bloodstream. And I'm going to talk about why that's important in a little bit. Now, moms, if you are buying nut milks, soy milks, alternative milks, you're going to look at your label and you're going to see that it is fortified with vitamin D2. And that is a problem that I will have to talk about another day. But vitamin D2 actually inhibits vitamin D3 uptake. And it's not a very good source of vitamin D2. So be careful. And I know, we don't have endless amounts of time to make our own nut milks. But if you can find a brand that doesn't fortify with D2, try to do that, okay? Vitamin C. This is not ascorbic acid, okay? We don't want the synthetic ascorbic acid. Now, if you want to know why, I really recommend you sign up and listen to Tristan's free webinar on the immune system. He talks about synthetics in detail. I'm going to kind of brush over them. But vitamin C, you want the whole food source of vitamin C because it's not just ascorbic acid. It's P factor. Did I include that in here? No, I didn't. Did I include it here? No. It's got so many other cofactors in with vitamin C that help with the uptake of vitamin C, help with oxygenation that the ascorbic acid does for the cells. And he'll explain that to you. Now, if your child is chronically constipated, they most likely need magnesium. Now, you can get magnesium from leafy green vegetables, but I'm pretty sure your child that's been living off of pizza for years is not going to be like, yes, give me 3 cups of leafy vegetables for the next month. So you might want to consider supplementing with a whole food source magnesium. Okay, again, not synthetics. Listen to Tristan's webinar as to why, okay? Fish oils are so crucial, okay? Now, fish oils not only help with brain function, joints, building tissues, but they also help they help transport calcium from the blood into the tissues. Zinc is a really good one. It's an immune booster. It helps cells with cellular function, and so on and so forth. Probiotics. Now, if your child, again, is constipated, if your child has been on antibiotics a lot, I would really recommend lactic acid yeast. If your child is old enough to swallow pills, then one of my favorite probiotics is called Probulin. Standard Process, everyone should be taking lactic acid yeast, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. But probiotics are so important, especially because your child has been ingesting antibiotics or antibiotics from its meat or antibiotics from their dairy that they've been drinking. So probiotics are going to be key. I forgot where I was going with that. And then calcium. Now, calcium is really, 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 really important for immune function. And here is why. And I kind of explained it earlier, when you run a fever, it draws the calcium out of the tissues and gives them to the white blood cells and help activate the white blood cells. It also helps bring that fever down, okay? If you don't have enough calcium, then you're not going to have that immune response, that healthy immune response. You're not going to have that fever induction that you need to induce that fever response. So you kind of have this vicious cycle, right? Now, here's the thing with calcium. Now, you've probably heard, oh, but if you supplement with calcium, then you get kidney stones. And that is true to some degree. It depends on the form of calcium. So remember this. Calcium lactate is the best form of calcium you can get, okay? And you want to make sure that your kid is getting it. Not carbonate, because calcium carbonate is too tightly bound. So it's not very bioavailable, all right? Okay, now, if your child, now, is it really realistic to take all of these supplements every day? No. So if you want to break it down to 3 things, I have this triad of immunity for you, okay? So the calcium, the Cataplex F, which is your fish oils, your omegas, and then the Cataplex C, which is your vitamin C, all right? So those 3 are really good for immune function. If your kid took that every day, they're doing awesome. Now in wintertime, make sure they're getting vitamin D. Summertime, make sure they're getting outside, okay? It's as easy as that. That triad of immunity with probiotics right here, fantastic. I think, and now I want to express something here real fast. Not all probiotics are made equal, all right? If you are giving your child a brand of probiotics and they are uncomfortable, they're gassy, they're acting out, they don't feel well, that wasn't a good probiotic. We have, again, a cultural problem where we think more is better and I get more bang for my buck. But here's the thing is when we get into these billions of different strands of bacteria and it's like, 100 billion organisms per pill, what happens is you ingest it and then you have all these different species and they are fighting for space. And they are just destroying each other and they're creating inflammation and gassiness and bloatedness, and then you are very, very unhappy. There's lots of research coming out showing that with probiotic dysfunction is coming health dysfunction too. So be careful. If you're taking your probiotic and you're not feeling good on it, don't take it, okay? Now, that is why I tell everyone they should at least be on lactic acid yeast, okay? Because lactic acid yeast is so simple, but what it does, it's a yeast that when you eat carbs, when you eat your sugar, when you eat your carbs, when you eat your vegetables, what it does is it helps to break down those carbs to create an acidic environment. Now you're probably thinking, but Janique, but alkalinity is the goal for health and blah, blah, blah. Not when it comes to your gut, okay? You want your gut to be acidic because that's where healthy bacteria really proliferate, okay? In your colon, it's even more acidic because of the lack of oxygen and so on and so forth. Another lecture for another time. But lactic acid yeast is just a good all-round, and they're really tasty. Standard Process makes a lactic acid yeast wafer that Satori, my daughter, likes to call cookies. And every time they eat a meal, I give them a little cookie, and it tastes really good. Like the texture's kind of weird, but I think it tastes really yummy. It's got like a slight little sweet taste, and it just really helps to create the right acidic environment for healthy gut bacteria to proliferate, but also to break down your foods as well, okay? But kind of going back, if your child has been on antibiotics, you might want to consider Standard Processes, what is it called? Lact-Ns or Probulin has, especially if you've been on antibiotics recently, Probulin has something called a P-Pack instead of a Z-Pack. How cute is that? And you take the P-Pack for 10 days, especially if your child can swallow those pills. But I love Probulin's probiotics, actually. They're fantastic. So lactic acid yeast for everyone in the family, and then Probulin, all right? Now, here's the thing with antibiotics. You have 3 to 7 days post-antibiotic use to repopulate your gut, okay? You got to get aggressive. So you need to take probiotics like crazy. You need to eat fermented foods like crazy. You need to make sure you're eating as little sugar as possible during that period of time, and you're loading up on the fiber. So fermented food, probiotics, fiber. Okay, that is the best window, the most crucial window to grow back your gut bacteria. If you take antibiotics and then you're feeding yourself carby foods, which you will crave because your good bacteria are dying and the bad bacteria are coming out to play, you're going to start feeding the bad bacteria all that sugar and they're going to grow, and then you're going to get yeast infections, bad breath, blah, 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 health issues. You get the picture, right? Okay. And then did we talk about calcium lactate? Yes, we did. Alrighty, moving on. So supplementation, you guys, they cannot be synthetics and they cannot be isolates because that's not how nature designed them. And that is not how your body was designed to absorb them. Now, you will get short-term benefits, don't get me wrong, by taking synthetics and by taking isolates, but emphasis on short-term benefits. So for instance, if you are taking ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, isolated, over a long period of time, you are actually going to get the symptoms you're trying to avoid, like scurvy. And they will show up and they manifest in milder forms like tissue dysfunction, lots of bruising, and so on and so forth. But it's going to cause a lot of havoc. Again, listen to Tristan's webinar about that because it's fascinating and he explains it really well. So, supplements that you do want to eat, supplements that you do want to take, they have to be a food base or food concentrate. So it's literally extracted from a food. It's extracted from a food, condensed, pressurized in, and then you're eating it. Okay. Let's see here. So people are like, okay, Janique, what do you recommend? Okay. So there are 6 supplements that I recommend that your child takes almost daily. Okay. Now, the Catalin, this is a really good, it's a Catalin chewable, and it's fantastic. It's a really good general, like, you know how you have the, your child gummies, which are disgusting, by the way, the Flintstones, and it's, what's the word? I'm like, oh, daily multivitamin. Okay, so the Catalin chewable is your child's daily multivitamin, and you can give, they say 3 tablets per day. If you want to do 2 to 3 a day, that's fine. You know, give them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this is why they say 3 per day. And this is why they tell you to break it up. Because your body can only absorb X amount at a time. So if you are flooding your system with a supplement, like if you're taking a large dose for breakfast, and you're like, oh, I'm going to absorb all of this. You're not. You're going to pee some of it out, okay? Or poop some of it out. So that's why they say 3 tablets per day, 3 times a day, because you want to do a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, a little bit in the evening. If you only have time to do morning and evening because, you know, kids are going, that's totally fine too, okay? Now I want to show you here. Look at all this food stuff. Like, it is beautiful. Standard Process is also one of the rare companies that actually uses organ meat in their supplements. And now I know that sounds gross, but back in the day, we would hunt our food and we would eat everything from it, and we would utilize all of the things from that animal. That's why people are so hot about bone broth, because the research is showing that those bones really good for you, okay? So that's why this has here, it has the cherry powder, it has bovine adrenals, bovine liver, bovine spleen, and so on and so forth, kidney, blah, 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 because those things are really high in vitamins, minerals, and are really good for your immune system, okay? I'm going to need some water. One sec. Drinking my green tea. Okay. So Conjuplex chewables. Now, if you have a child that has immune dysfunction right now and they're getting sick a lot, you're going to want to have your child take this 1 to 3 times a day, okay? Or you can buy this and just put it on your shelf for a rainy day. So when your child does get sick, you're loading them up with 2 every 3 hours, okay? And you want to just keep hitting it over and over, or 2 every 4 hours or something. So Conjuplex, it is really good for your child to take 1 a day. But again, if your child is really sick, or if you want to save this for like a rainy day when they do get sick, always have this on tap, okay? This is more like a daily. This can be a very proactive immune stimulant. But if you want to just keep it in your shelf for when they do get sick, and then they get sick, then you start pumping the Conjuplex chewables 2 every 3 to 4 hours, okay? Some people say like 2 an hour. I think that's a little excessive, but whatever. Next. Okay, this is our fatty acids, right? Our tuna omega chewable. It contains the vitamin D. We could talk about vitamin D another time. And it helps bones and teeth, and it provides antioxidants. And also we spoke about how these fatty acids, they help get Oh, I didn't explain this. Oh my gosh. Okay, so maybe I should explain what the calcium. Oh, you guys. And we're running out of time, and so I'm trying to get everything in so fast. Okay, we spoke about how important calcium was, right? So when you eat calcium, when you take it in, it goes into your gut. Vitamin D draws it out of the gut, puts it into your bloodstream, okay? Vitamin F, so fatty acids, takes it from the bloodstream and puts it into the tissues, puts it into the cells, okay? Otherwise, you're just swimming in all this calcium, and then your kidneys are just going to filter it out. So you want to make sure that you are absorbing it and then absorbing it again into your tissues. So fatty acids, they take it from the blood, they take calcium from the bloodstream, put it into the tissues, all right? And again, we spoke about why calcium is so important, because not only does it help with building blocks, not only does it help with every cellular function in your body, but it helps to turn on your immune system. It helps to get those white blood cells moving like crazy, okay? So every child should be taking fish oils. Helps with brain development. It's amazing. Helps with the immune system, blah, 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 okay? All right, lactic acid yeast. We spoke about lactic acid yeast earlier, how it was like, I think it was the very original probiotic actually in the market, and it has stood the test of time. Everyone should be on lactic acid yeast, you guys, everyone, okay? And then whey protein complete. If you want your children to start taking a really good protein, this is really good for them as well. Okay, and it also has a lot of vitamins. It has their proprietary blend, which is, again, it acts as a protein, but it also acts as a multivitamin. So if your child isn't putting on weight, has immune dysfunction, and you're like, they just don't eat food, the only thing they're living off are like hot dogs and hamburgers, you'll want to get this, okay? Because this will load them up with really good proteins and minerals and vitamins, okay? And then last but not least, we spoke about calcium. Calcium, calcium, calcium. Immune boosting, cell function, building tissues. I mean, you name it, calcium is there and it does the job. Now, in the past, calcium has had a bad rep, and it's because it hasn't been bioavailable, and there's been a lot of studies linking kidney stones to calcium supplementation. But again, if it's not bioavailable, yeah, you're going to filter it out your kidneys. So this is the most bioavailable. It is so good for your children. There was another one. Calcium carbonate is not bioavailable, but I think like bicarbonate is or something. Anyways, calcium lactate is just the best of the best of the best. So that is what I would recommend, and them to take this daily. All right. Now, we're going to briefly go over this. We spoke about nutrition. We've spoken about supplementation. Herbs. Now, I'm just going to recommend echinacea. Okay, there are tons and tons of herbs. This should actually be a class on its own, but I don't want to overwhelm you guys. Echinacea is incredible, and I will have to do another class on this. Now, MediHerb has an incredible echinacea. If you want to know more about this echinacea, I can send you, it's kind of funny, I can send you a picture of one of the slides that I went to a class on, and it compared MediHerb's echinacea, the species that it was coming from, the concentration and the dosage, and then like 10 other companies, and how it was like half of the concentration that the MediHerb echinacea actually has. And so you're spending more money for less, basically, when you buy these other companies. So if you're interested in echinacea, message us and we'll give you information on that, okay? But essential oils. Now, essential oils are fantastic because they're easy, they're inexpensive, they'll last you a long time, and everyone, so if you have a child, if they have a bedroom, in that bedroom should be a diffuser, a humidifier, okay? If you don't have a humidifier, put a diffuser in there. My kids have a humidifier and a diffuser, and here is why. Humidifiers help with breathing, and especially if you live in a dry climate, you guys, it's just not really good for the respiratory system. It's not good for their sinuses, but you want the essential oils diffused at the same time because they act as antibacterials, antifungals, antivirals, as soon as I hear my children coughing, I am diffusing things like crazy. And in a day, it clears up. Okay, so you want to be disinfecting your air with essential oils. You want to be disinfecting their rooms with the essential oils being vaporized and so on and so forth. Now, I've given you here a list of essential oils that are some of the most potent antibacterial, antifungal, antiviral. What I actually do is I buy unscented soap and I put these essential oils in my soaps to create my antibacterials, okay? And they work phenomenally, okay? So here's the list. Here's a link that you can go to Honestly Essential. So Honestly Essential is actually a mother company of Provo Health. And so the reason why we bottle our own essential oils is for quality control and for pricing, because we want to get you the best, but not like charge you a small loan for it, okay? I wanted you guys to see this. Oh no, this is in the way. But this was actually someone who became a client of ours, and she said that what I would recommend is getting the fall blend, and I think it's still available because it has the clove, it has the cinnamon in, it's very antiviral, antifungal, and it smells like the holidays, and it's disinfecting your house. You're breathing it in, it's killing everything in the air. And what she said, if you want to pause here and read this, and this is what everyone says though, and that's the thing, but Autumn, she actually just reached out to us and she said, I need to tell you what this has done for my family. And their kids got sick way less or in shorter amounts of time. And they were so much more mild. You guys, essential oils do work. You don't have to ingest them. That's dangerous. Please don't ingest them. Just diffuse them. Put them in your soaps. You know what I mean? Put them in your bath salts. They will help keep your immune system strong. So put a diffuser in your children's room and a humidifier. Okay, if you don't want to do a humidifier, then just the diffuser, because that's going to put some humidity in the room anyways. Okay, and then put these essential oils in there. Sound good? All right, so conclusion time. All right, so why are we talking about this? Why is this important? Why do we want your kids to have a strong immune system now, today, from young? Okay, because of this tale of two Jenga towers. Now, if your child, let's take person A, we'll take me for example, okay? I grew up with a mother who was a practitioner of complementary medicine in South Africa, okay? So I grew up with the weird diet, with the vegetables, with the fruits, so many supplements. I mean, I can't even tell you how many sprays I took and blah, 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 blah. And I thought my parents were crazy. But then I got Graves' disease at the age of 26, which is incurable. And I was able to cure it naturally and within like less than 6 months. Like that's unheard of, okay? Why did that happen? Well, let's say we cloned me, okay? And me, number 2, ate tons of junk food, never exercised, stressed like crazy. I lived off of pizza and soda and so much sugar. Then I got the same diagnosis at 26. And then I tried to heal my Graves' disease naturally. It probably would have taken me years. We're talking like 3 to 4 to 5 years. I probably would have had to go on medication, and I probably would have given up, to be honest. I would have been like, you know what? None of this is working. I'm seeing mild results, so on and so forth. So where am I going with this? This is person number A. This was me growing up, and I'm not, honestly, guys, I'm not the picture perfect person of health. So I'm just using this kind of like a story, okay? So person A here got all the building blocks, got sick, and healed really fast. Why? Because all of these building blocks were there. They ate the foods. They had good immunity. They have good gut function. They get sick, they bounce back real fast. Person B here, they're missing all of these blocks. Their tower is really, really fickle, okay? You just look at them sideways and they get sick. Okay, see how this person, even with them getting sick in their adulthood, they have years worth of dysfunction here to heal from. Why is it so important for our children to fix their health now? Because we don't want them having these holes in their towers, okay? We want them starting off strong, starting off with a good foundation. Because if they have this foundation in their first 18 years that they're in their house, they're going to be coming into my clinic by the time they're 30, by the time they're 40, by the time they're 50. They're going to end up on what I like to call the medical merry-go-round, where they have all of these health problems, but nothing is showing up in their blood work. Doctors don't know what's wrong with them. And they give them some diagnosis like fibromyalgia, right? Or what's another cop-out that doctors prescribe, or not prescribe, but diagnose with? I don't know, but fibromyalgia seems to be like a big one, right? Or chronic fatigue syndrome. And why, and no one knows the answers why. And so then they come and they seek out alternative things. And we're like, okay, you have all of these missing building blocks. We're going to have to heal your gut. We're going to have to heal your autoimmune issues because your body's attacking itself. We're going to have to deal with your stress. We're going to have to deal with your environmental factors. And we're going to have to heal 30, 40, 50 years worth of dysfunction for you to function normally again. So why is this important? Because you don't want to set your kids up for failure, okay? Teach them now to enjoy healthy foods, as well as the bad foods, obviously. Teach their bodies now how to absorb those foods, how to enjoy those foods, how to diversify their palates, because that is going to have to sustain them. These bodies that they have now are going to have to hold them throughout the rest of their life. So make sure they are growing a strong constitution and not one that is easily inflamed, one that easily gets sick, one that easily allows infection to set up shop in their body, okay? And so that is the point of all of this together. We want this Jenga tower of bodies for our kids. We don't want this for them, okay? And we know that this is happening when they have food allergies, when they get sick easily, when they are chronically getting sinus infections, ear infections, when they're chronically sick, okay? So if you are seeing those signs right now, now is the time to start healing that. Starting with nutrition, starting with environment, starting with supplementation, and that's it. That's all I have to say. So if you made it this long, congratulations. That was a lot of information out there, and I apologize, but hopefully that was helpful because it is really, really important stuff, you guys. Let me know what you want me to expand on in the future because I know that was a lot of information. So if there was something that wasn't clear, let's talk about it. Let's do another webinar, okay? Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for staying this long. Good luck, and let me know how else we can help you guys. Take care. Bye.